Hi, I'm Steve Gedeon, a professor at one of the largest entrepreneurship programs in the world at the Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. But today, I'm coming from our family cottage, a few hours north of the city, near Muskoka and Parry Sound. Trying to escape some of the summer heat up here. Welcome to Module number 10 of the Entrepreneurial Career and Life Design Principles series. In addition to this series of 10 modules, there are also a number of tools available and a workbook and online resources and assignments that all form the body of what I'm talking about right now, for particularly focused on my courses, but also hopefully for a more broad audience. And if there's interest, maybe I'll do something more of a general interest for people who want to know about it. So far we've finished Entrepreneurial Principle number 1, the bird in the hand principle. And we've learned about the second entrepreneurial principle related to the scientific method and the diamond design thinking method, where you do divergent and convergent thinking. We've learned a number of tools along the way. We've learned about the wheel of life with different types of career, job, and family balances to be aware of. We've looked at your dashboard. This is where you measure what gives you energy and flow and what you're interested in, and we did a variety of personality tests and career interest tests and assessment of your values and beliefs and some of your self-talk thinking. We then went through in addition to these divergent thinking methods, we went through a series of convergent thinking methods. We talked about the need to create a lot of Post-it notes because you're exceeding your ability to remember things. And so you need to visualize your information by getting it out there into Post-it notes, and that you look for patterns. And you could do, for example, 2x2 matrix, where you compare maybe the tools that you did with yellow Post-its versus some other things that you did using pink Post-it notes or maybe green Post-it notes. You're looking for patterns and insights into what your design challenges are during this convergent thinking. We then capture the insights from the divergent thinking pair in the diamond using a variety of tools. So this could include, for example, capturing your T-shaped profile to share with other people. It's a nice graphical way to show other people, or a SWOT diagram, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Your CV, things like that. You could capture your learning and use that to drive the different design challenges that you might have. We also talked about the need for visualization and radical collaboration and radical candor in principle number 3. We then captured all the insights into a series of design challenges related to your wheel of life, and I suggested design challenges related to a job or entrepreneurship, looking at side hustle or a startup or some other thing that you do outside of your job in order to grow your human capital and your social capital. We looked at design challenges associated with growing your social capital and your character. So we encapsulated this into 5 specific design challenges that I suggested. One related to finding a job or an entrepreneurial opportunity within a kind of existing corporate framework, using a customer persona specifically related to that type of person. We talked about the second one related to some kind of a side hustle, and this would be a different customer persona. This might be a B2C kind of a model, or something that you might use either human-centric understanding of or possibly online tools as a second customer persona. We also looked at design challenges related to your character and your overall balance among all aspects. So this resulted in a number of different customer personas, and we talked about Entrepreneurial Principle number 4, user centricity. And so we changed now from a single diamond for looking at ourselves and inwardly thinking to looking out at other people using the principle of user centricity. This was module number 5. This is a pretty action-packed one. I showed you 6 or 7 different books of different ways of thinking through who your customers might be, and that there are a variety of completely different types. For example, there's an employer as a possible user-centric persona. There's online people you might be wanting to communicate with, or it could be even yourself for growing your own character or becoming a better human being to make yourself more desirable in a romantic relationship. So while you're pursuing your portfolio of design challenges and going through these variety of double diamonds, keep in mind entrepreneurial principle number 5, which is the affordable loss principle. So affordable loss says, first of all, you should have a portfolio of design challenges, so something potentially related to a job, but also one related to a side hustle or a social venture or to character development or to your overall balance in your wheel of life. But in addition to taking a portfolio approach, the affordable loss principle also talks about putting in the least amount of effort to gain the most information possible through the use of prototyping. So we talked about why you're going through the double diamond to use prototyping. And so you can prototype conversations rather than just interviewing for a job. You could prototype a conversation with someone around what a life might look like if you were to take such a job. But also you could prototype different job experiences. And we talked about another principle around the VP of sales at 3DNA. And the principle is to put in value before you try to take out value. So also as you're going through these series of double diamonds, we talked about the lemonade principle. And this is the idea that you're not just trying to get over bad things like the Venetian Empire did, but you're also specifically seeking surprise. You're seeking novelty. You're going out of your way to try to find the unexpected in extreme users and to look for workarounds. And it's exactly these problems and needs and these surprises that are a huge source of sustainable competitive advantage while you're going through the double diamond. Our last principle then was entrepreneurial principle number 7, which is the pilot in the plane principle. And this principle talks about making sure you understand the difference between controlling what's in your control and letting go of things that are outside of your control. And we used the idea of water off a duck, that things outside of you should just beat up and then roll off. Beat up and roll off, like water off a duck. That you shouldn't let things outside of your control unduly affect you, and that you could potentially control the negative consequences of these external things using positive self-talk. We talked about a variety of deep thought leadership around this pilot in the plane principle. We talked about Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and slow. And we talked about system 1 is your cruise control or your elephant, whereas system 2 is your executive function, that you have to turn on your system 2 and force your brain to exert the effort to do the hard work involved in coming up with good decision making. We talked about the deep stream of research related to how your subconscious beliefs affect your emotional responses to things and your kind of sort of day-to-day happiness level, that you should be aware of your dysfunctional beliefs and that you can reframe these dysfunctional beliefs in a more positive way. And we talked about the power of self-talk, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistic programming, and mindfulness as a way to reprogram your bad habits and your bad beliefs and your bad self-talk to put these in a more positive way. Finally, we talked about the deep stream of research associated with the theory of planned behavior and the idea of human agency, that we control our beliefs, we control our values and our attitudes, and we control our intention, our goals. And we talked about a couple of major constructs, one related to self-esteem, and we talked about the difference between having an internal or an external locus of control. That if you have an internal locus of control, your hands are on the steering wheel of your life. An external locus of control is you let go of the wheel and you turn your control over to fate, destiny, God, the stars, or some other external agency beyond you. And so we talked about the importance of agency in controlling your beliefs, attitudes, and values. So we've now made a lot of progress. We've gone through a series of portfolio of double diamond design challenges. You've articulated what your design challenges are. You now have a variety of SMART goals. You've got some positive talk. You had an exercise in articulating at least a first draft of your purpose or mission. And you're journaling and you're tracking your happiness on a day-to-day as well as on a long-term basis. So what kind of happiness are we talking about here? Well, I'm really referring to a basket of positive emotional states that I'm giving the label of happiness to. But when I say happiness, I could be referring to joy, contentment, satisfaction, bliss, meaning, pleasure, well-being, flourishing. It's this positive basket of emotional states. Not every day is going to be a giddy roller coaster ride where, woohoo, I'm so happy. Sometimes you wake up and you're not in as good of a mood, or the weather's not as good outside, and you don't have that same level of happiness that you do when you're going to start on a vacation or something like that. So we're now tracking our happiness, and you can think of it, your happiness as you're measuring on a scale of happiness on the y-axis versus on the x-axis would be time. So that over the course of time, your happiness level will change. It'll change on a day-to-day basis, but it'll also change on a long-term basis. And so regardless of whether you're measuring this on a day-by-day basis or a month-by-month basis, that you have ups and downs. You graduate or somebody dies, that this is tragedies that befall you in your life, and there will be ups and downs that happen. But the important aspect is, are you increasing over time? Is the overall slope of your happiness versus time going up? And over the course of time, as you work on the things that cause you unhappiness and remove those from your life and hopefully focus more on long-term sources of happiness, that you're also reducing the variability in your happiness, that you might have wild swings at certain times in your life, but that over time, as you climb Maslow's hierarchy of values and you're achieving more of a solid base and understanding of your own self-esteem and financial security and loving relationships and things, that your variability reduces and the overall trend is going strongly upward. I'm talking about a more fundamental kind of a happiness that sustains you through the ups and downs. And there's really three kinds of happiness. One is the day-to-day ups and downs, and these are things that are outside of your control, but you can control your emotional reaction to them, mostly through positive self-talk and kind of reprogramming your subconscious. There's also the day-to-day responses that are within your control, that you should let yourself feel joy and happiness when something goes well. You should take the time and the effort to feel gratitude, and all the self-help and happiness gurus talk about the need to reward yourself, to catch yourself in the act of being happy, to write it down, and then to relish in that and to reward yourself, maybe with in my case, I have maybe a cocktail or something like that, or maybe you can make yourself something nice for dinner, or you take some time off to listen to your favorite music or something like that. So there's the day-to-day ups and downs that are outside of your control. There's the day-to-day ups and downs that are within your control that you take the time to reward yourself for. But the third kind of happiness is this happiness in terms of the overall progression of your life. Is your life in control? Are you empowered? Are you making good choices? Are there any major sources of contradiction in your life that are causing you sustainable unhappiness? Is there some contradiction that you need to be aware of? So while you're going through this happiness and you're tracking things, be aware of your sources of unhappiness. Be aware of whether you're being caused to be unhappy because of things outside of your control, and that you don't have a thick enough skin, that things happen and you react inappropriately too quickly, and this causes you unhappiness. That there's this thin microsecond of time between the event and your reaction that you can gain control of. Sometimes this is something that can be better controlled through mindfulness. Sometimes it's better controlled through positive self-talk. But there's these, things happen that cause you to be unhappy, that things make you unhappy. You should have a thicker skin. Again, it should be like water off a duck. These things should just beat up and roll off rather than really bugging you and ruining your day. Also be aware of the second source of unhappiness, which is that things are going according to plan. Things are going pretty well, but you're not as happy as you want to be. That really you could be more proactive in finding new sources of happiness, finding things to find joy and excitement about, finding better ways to reinforce and relish the positive things that happen to you, or go out of your way to look for things, to surround yourself with beauty and happiness. And of course, there's the third major source, which is this deeper sources of contradictions in your life. These are contradictions that affect your long-term happiness, and we will be covering that in more detail in the next episode. So, the primary assignment based on this episode is journaling to monitor your happiness and identifying sources of contradictions that cause unhappiness. So I talk about this more in the tools section of this, but I figured I'd bring it into this particular module. You should track your life in a journal, and here's an example of one of my journals. This is journal number 29. I've been doing this for over 30 years now. I've got a bunch of these that I bought in Venice. They're nicely covered, and nice, good, solid stock, and these journals are really good for kind of tracking what's happening in your life. That, here I am, with stickers from the APE boot camp in Germany. Here's an example of this was from a ferry that we took going across to Messina to Sicily. Here's tickets for museums that I've been to. Here's a couple of nice business cards from restaurants that I really love. But I also use this just to track events in my life and to track goals and things like that. So this is a good way to do that. So what have we learned today? Well, first of all, we really reviewed the overall entrepreneurial career and life design methodology and gave you a start to finish where we've been, where we're going. I reviewed specifically the 7 entrepreneurial principles to date. We talked about feedback and happiness. We talked about happiness as being a generic term that represents a basket of positive emotions, such as joy and contentment, satisfaction, bliss, and things like that. We talked about 3 different kinds of happiness, and we talked about the difference between day-to-day happiness and long-term sustainable sources of happiness. Thanks again for joining today. Remember, entrepreneurship is like learning how to play the guitar. Don't forget to crank it up to 11.